Prologue. In the vastness of the cosmos, where time and space intertwine in ways beyond human comprehension, an ancient war has raged for eons. A war unseen by mortal eyes, yet felt in the very fabric of a reality. Long ago, in a realm far beyond our own, the Eternal Empire stood as a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. Led by the enigmatic King Asmar, they were the vanguard against an enemy that defied understanding, the Dzalkri, consumers of worlds and devourers of civilizations. For centuries, the Eternal Empire fought valiantly, pushing back the tide of oblivion. But even their advanced technology and indomitable spirit could not withstand the relentless assault forever. As their defenses crumbled and their worlds fell, King Asmar made a desperate gambit. Using forbidden knowledge and sacrificing much of their remaining power, the last survivors of the Eternal Empire scattered themselves across the multiverse. They entered a state of suspended animation, waiting for the day when they would be needed once more. One such sleeper was Asmar himself, who chose a young, primitive world as his resting place, a planet called Earth. As Asmar slumbered in his golden coffin, buried deep beneath the African soil, humanity rose from its cradle. Empires bloomed and withered, technologies advanced, and all the while the Dzalkri's influence grew in secret. Now, in the year 2024, as humanity stands on the precipice of a new era, the cosmic chessboard is set. The pieces are in motion, the players taking their positions for a game that will determine the fate of not just Earth, but all of reality. And in a remote dig site, under the scorching African sun, a brilliant archaeologist named Dr. Sarah Chen is about to unearth a discovery that will change everything.
Welcome to the Shadowverse Chronicles. Please like and subscribe. Now join us for the Eternal Slumber.
Dr. Sarah Chen wiped sweat from her brow, squinting against the harsh African sun. Her radio crackled to life, breaking the oppressive silence. "Dr. Chen, we found something." Sarah bolted across the dig site, dust billowing in her wake. She skidded to a halt at the edge of a freshly excavated pit, where her assistant Jake crouched beside a gleaming object. "My God," Sarah breathed, sliding down into the pit. "Is that... a coffin?" Jake confirmed, his voice quavering. "Solid gold." Sarah knelt, her fingers hovering inches from the coffin's surface. Intricate hieroglyphs covered every inch, unlike any she'd ever encountered. "This shouldn't be here," she muttered. "This region's never shown evidence of this level of civilization." "Should we open it?" Jake asked. Sarah hesitated. Protocol screamed to wait, to document meticulously. But something tugged at her, an inexplicable urgency overriding scientific caution. "Yes," she decided. "Help me with the lid." They positioned themselves on either side. Sarah counted down. 3, 2, 1, lift. The lid resisted, then gave way with a hiss of escaping air. Ancient dust billowed out, sending them stumbling back, coughing. As the air cleared, Sarah peered inside. Her breath caught in her throat. A man lay within, his ebony skin unmarred by time. Resplendent in gold and lapis lazuli, a crown adorned his noble brow. His chest rose and fell with slow, steady breaths. "Impossible," Jake whispered. The man's eyes snapped open. Sarah recoiled, nearly falling. The man sat up in one fluid motion, his gaze locking onto hers. His eyes were jet black, without discernible iris or pupil. "Who are you?" Sarah stammered. The man's lips parted. He spoke in an unknown language, deep and resonant. Then he frowned, tilted his head as if listening, and tried again. "I am Asmar," he said, his accent thick but the words clear. "King of the Eternal Empire. What year is this?" Sarah's mind reeled. 2024. Asmar's eyes widened. "So long," he murmured. The sleep was meant to last only 1,000 years. He climbed out with surprising grace, towering over them. His gaze swept across the site, lingering on the modern equipment. "You have advanced," he said. "Good. We'll need every advantage." "Advantage?" Sarah asked, a chill racing down her spine. "Against what?" Asmar's black eyes bored into her. "The real reason I slept, Dr. Chen. The enemy that nearly destroyed my people. An enemy that has been among you unseen for millennia." He stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "They are still here. And now that I've awakened, they will come for us all." A high-pitched whine filled the air. Sarah clapped hands over her ears, watching in horror as Asmar's face contorted in pain. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head. Through the noise, Sarah heard a new sound, the rhythmic thump of approaching helicopters. Asmar grabbed her arm, his grip like iron. "We must go!" he hissed through gritted teeth. "Now!" Black helicopters appeared on the horizon. Sarah faced an impossible choice: flee with this ancient stranger, or stay and face an unknown threat. The whine intensified. Equipment sparked and shorted out around them. Jake collapsed, blood trickling from his ears. Sarah made her decision. She grabbed Asmar's arm and ran, leaving behind everything she knew. As they sprinted towards the nearby ravine, the helicopters drew closer, their spotlights cutting through the gathering dusk. A voice boomed from above, unnaturally distorted. "Surrender the awakened one, and you may live." Asmar pulled Sarah closer as they ran. "Do not listen," he panted. "They are not what they seem." They plunged into the ravine just as gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets pinged off rocks, showering them with stone fragments. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah gasped as they scrambled deeper into the darkness. Asmar's eyes gleamed in the fading light. "The end of your world, Dr. Chen, or its salvation. And it all depends on what we do next." A spotlight swept over them, and inhuman shrieks echoed through the ravine. Whatever pursued them, Sarah realized with dawning horror, was not human at all. This ends part 1. Please tail a look in description for part 2.
Hello and welcome to the Shadowverse Chronicles presentation of this original story, The Eternal Slumber Part 2 by the Chipmunk, so please like the story and relax.
Part 2 of The Eternal Slumber. Sarah's lungs burned as she and Asmar raced through the darkening ravine. The inhuman shrieks behind them grew louder, accompanied by the whir of helicopter blades. "This way!" Asmar commanded, veering towards a narrow crevice. They squeezed through, loose rocks clattering beneath their feet. Sarah's ankle twisted and she bit back a cry. Asmar's hand shot out, steadying her with surprising strength. "We must hurry," he urged. "They're closing in." A spotlight pierced the growing darkness, sweeping across the ravine walls. Sarah pressed herself against the cool rock, heart hammering. "Who are they?" she hissed. Asmar's face hardened. "The Veil, servants of the Zalkri. They've shaped your world from the shadows for centuries." Sarah's mind reeled. "Aliens? We're running from aliens?" "Not aliens," Asmar corrected. "Something far worse. The Zalkri exist beyond your comprehension of space and time. They consume realities. A voice boomed from above, distorted and chilling. Surrender the awakened one. Resistance is futile. Asmar growled, a sound that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. We can't let them take us. Follow me, and do exactly as I say. They sprinted deeper into the ravine. Sarah's scientific mind warred with the impossible reality she faced. Part of her screamed to stop, to surrender to the authorities. But a deeper instinct drove her onward. The ravine opened into a small clearing. At its center stood a rock formation that looked oddly out of place, its surface too smooth, too regular. Asmar approached it, placing his hand on the surface. Lines of light spread from his palm, forming intricate patterns. With a low rumble, a section of rock slid away, revealing a dark passage. Quickly, Asmar urged, ushering Sarah inside. The passage sealed behind them, plunging them into darkness. Sarah blinked, her eyes slowly adjusting to a faint bioluminescent glow emanating from the walls. "What is this place?" she whispered. "A sanctuary," Asmar replied. "One of many we built to hide from the Zalkri. It should shield us from their sensors." They moved deeper into the complex, passing chambers filled with strange machinery. Sarah's fingers itched to examine them, to unravel their secrets. "How can you understand English?" she asked, breaking the tense silence. "How can you operate this technology after thousands of years?" Asmar's lips quirked in a humorless smile. "My sleep wasn't idle, Dr. Chen. My mind roamed free, observing your world as it changed. I learned much." They entered a vast circular room dominated by a holographic display. Asmar approached it, his fingers dancing across unseen controls. The display flickered to life, showing a map of Earth crisscrossed with pulsing lines of energy. "The Veils Network," Asmar explained. "They've woven themselves into the fabric of your society. Governments, corporations, religions, all dance to their tune." Sarah stared at the display, her worldview crumbling. "Why? What do they want?" "To prepare your world for consumption," Asmar said grimly. "The Zalkri feed on the potential energy of entire civilizations. They nurture worlds like farmers tend crops, maximizing their yield." Sarah's mind raced, connecting dots she'd never known existed. The rapid technological advancements of the last century, that was them? Asmar nodded. "They push you to the brink of destroying yourselves, then swoop in to save you. In your gratitude, you would have given them everything." "Would have?" Sarah caught the past, tense. "What's changed?" "Me," Asmar said simply. "My awakening wasn't part of their plan. They fear what I know, what I might do to disrupt their harvest." He manipulated the display, zooming in on a location in the nearby mountains. "There's a weapon here, capable of severing the Zalkri's connection to this reality. If we can reach it and activate it, we can drive them back." Sarah's scientific skepticism reasserted itself. "How can I believe any of this? It sounds insane." Asmar turned to her, his black eyes softening. "I understand your doubt, Dr. Chen, but deep down you know I speak the truth. You've felt their influence your entire life, even if you didn't recognize it." Before Sarah could respond, an alarm blared through the complex. The holographic display flickered, showing multiple red dots converging on their location. "Impossible," Asmar breathed. "They've found us." The walls shuddered as if struck by a massive force. Dust rained down from the ceiling. "We must reach the weapon," Asmar said urgently. "It's our only hope." He grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her towards another passage. As they ran, the complex shook again, more violently. Cracks spread across the walls and ceiling. They burst into another chamber just as the roof behind them collapsed. Sarah stumbled, coughing in the dust-filled air. When she looked up, her blood ran cold. A figure stood before them, tall and inhumanly thin. Its skin shimmered like oil on water, and its eyes were empty voids that seemed to draw in all light. "Zalkri!" Asmar snarled, pushing Sarah behind him. The creature's mouth didn't move, but its voice reverberated in Sarah's mind, a cacophony of whispers and screams. "The sleeper awakens," it said. "How inconvenient." It raised a long, spindly arm, and Sarah felt an invisible force lift her off her feet. As she gasped for air, suspended in the creature's grasp, one thought blazed through her mind. This was no longer just Asmar's fight. The fate of humanity now rested in her hands.
Please see the description for Part 3. Hello, and welcome to the Shadowverse Chronicles presentation of this original story, The Eternal Slumber Part 3 by the Chipmunk Storyteller. So please like the story and relax.
And now the conclusion to the eternal slumber. Sarah's lungs screamed for air as the Zalkri's invisible grip tightened. Her vision blurred, darkness creeping in at the edges. Through the haze, she saw Asmar lunge at the creature, his hands blazing with otherworldly energy. The Zalkri shrieked, a sound that threatened to shatter Sarah's mind. It released her, and she crumpled to the ground, gasping. "Run!" Asmar shouted, grappling with the alien. "Find the weapon!" Sarah scrambled to her feet, adrenaline surging through her veins. She sprinted down the corridor, the sounds of battle fading behind her. Her scientific mind reeled, struggling to process the impossible reality she now faced. The passageway opened into a vast chamber. At its center stood a towering obelisk, covered in the same strange hieroglyphs as Asmar's coffin. Sarah approached it cautiously, her hand hovering over its surface. A thunderous crash echoed from the corridor. Sarah whirled to see Asmar stumble into the chamber, his golden skin marred with black, oil-like streaks. "Hurry," he gasped. "We don't have much time." Sarah's fingers brushed the obelisk. It hummed to life, lines of energy pulsing beneath her palm. "How do we activate it?" Asmar staggered to her side. "It requires a sacrifice, a life freely given." Sarah's blood ran cold. "You mean—" "Yes," Asmar nodded grimly. "One of us must die to power the weapon." The chamber shuddered as something massive struck the entrance. Cracks spiderwebbed across the stone. Asmar gripped Sarah's shoulders. "Listen carefully. When I merge with the obelisk, you must recite the activation phrase. Repeat after me. Nektar vral korshi mat." Sarah's tongue stumbled over the alien syllables. "Nektar vral korshi mahat." "Again," Asmar insisted. She repeated it again and again until the words flowed smoothly. The entrance exploded inward. The Zalkri glided through the debris, its form shifting and writhing like a nightmare given flesh. Asmar shoved Sarah behind him. "Remember the phrase. No matter what happens, don't stop reciting it." He pressed his hand against the obelisk. Energy surged around him, lifting him off the ground. He threw his head back and screamed as his body began to dissolve into pure light. Sarah's voice shook as she began the chant. "Nektar vral korshi ma'at." The Zalkri lunged forward, its form elongating impossibly. Sarah dodged, never stopping her recitation. "Nektar vral korshi mahat." Tendrils of darkness lashed out, slicing her arm. Sarah bit back a cry of pain, focusing on the words. "Nektar vral korshi mahat." The obelisk pulsed brighter with each repetition. The Zalkri shrieked, its body contorting as it tried to reach Sarah. She scrambled backwards, her back pressed against the far wall. "Nektar vral korshi mahat." Asmar's form had almost entirely merged with the obelisk. His eyes, now orbs of pure energy, locked onto Sarah's. His voice echoed in her mind. "Once more." Sarah took a deep breath and shouted the phrase one final time. "Nektar vral korshi maat." The obelisk erupted with blinding light. Sarah shielded her eyes as waves of energy pulsed outward. The The Zolkri's screams reached a fever pitch, then abruptly cut off. When the light faded, Sarah lowered her arm. The chamber was empty save for the obelisk, now dark and lifeless. Of the Xalkri and Asma, there was no sign. Sarah approached the obelisk on shaky legs. Her fingers traced the hieroglyphs, still warm to the touch. "Asma," she whispered. Silence answered her. A rumble shook the chamber. Without the alien technology to sustain it, the entire complex was collapsing. Sarah ran, her survival instinct kicking in. She navigated the crumbling corridors, barely staying ahead of the cave-ins. She burst out of the hidden entrance, stumbling into the ravine. The night sky above was alight with streaks of fire, alien ships burning up in the atmosphere. Sarah sank to her knees, overwhelmed. They had won, but at what cost? And what would happen now? A sound made her turn. A group of people approached, led by a familiar face. Jake, her assistant from the dig site. "Dr. Chen," he called out. "Thank God you're alive. What happened? The military's gone crazy, talking about some kind of global event." Sarah stood, brushing dust from her clothes. How could she possibly explain what had transpired? Would anyone believe her? As Jake reached her, his eyes widened. "Dr. Chen, your arm. It's glowing." Sarah looked down. Where the Xalkri had struck her, lines of golden energy pulsed beneath her skin. She flexed her fingers, feeling a strange power coursing through her. In that moment, Sarah realized the truth. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. And somehow, she would have to prepare humanity for what was to come. She squared her shoulders and faced Jake. "We need to talk," she said. "The world as we know it has changed, and I'm going to need your help." As the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the African landscape, Sarah Chen stepped forward to meet her destiny and humanity's uncertain future. The end.
Thank you for joining us, and please like and subscribe.